Hi everyone, I'm just making a quick video here. As you can see, I've been watching Premiere Horgan gave a speech about 6 hours ago. It's posted on YouTube. It has very few followers here. This is for BC. And it's amazing what he is saying. Basically, he doesn't think that masks and things, like he doesn't want to get rid of all mandates. He is waiting for Bonnie Henry to come speak next week about what the plans of BC are. It's funny because he's saying, that it's not political, and yet I 100% believe they are waiting to see what happens politically before they make any moves. I'll just rewind this a little bit so you can hear exactly what he says about it. It's pretty unreal.
Hoping that we're going to move that quickly as well.
Well, I would suggest that we're going to follow the same path that we have been on since the pandemic began, and that is to take advice and counsel from public health officials who are working with our acute care system and working with others in the community to make sure that we're continuing to protect people. And restrictions, direction and advice on restrictions will come from the Public Health Office in the days ahead. She's made it clear that she has plans for Family Day, which is coming. I will say that where we have had success is ensuring that workplaces have plans in place to protect workers and to protect customers, and that should continue beyond the pandemic. I believe that masks are effective in protecting people, and I don't believe that an arbitrary decision by an elected official is the best way forward in that regard. And similarly, the immunization cards supported by the vast majority of people to ensure that the sacrifices that they've made have provided benefits for them and their families going forward. And we'll just see where Dr. Henry wants to go with all of this. She hasn't advised me on her plans yet. I have a vague idea based on hospitalizations being stable, cases coming down. And with respect to other jurisdictions, everybody's addressed this in a different way. And I'll put our record up against all of the other provinces in the country, and outcomes have been better in terms of mortalities, in terms of impacts on the economy. Clearly, our unemployment rate is 5.1%, leading the country, created more jobs than existed before the pandemic. I think there's a lot of positive to say about how we've got here, and it all is a result not of government policy. Specifically, it's about British Columbians recognizing and acknowledging that they have a role to play to protect themselves, their families, and their communities. And I don't believe that's going to change because of announcements in other provinces.
Next question is from Binder Sargent, CTV.
Hi, Premier. Just following up on what Rob asked there. Just wondering, you said you have a big idea. Could it be, you think, weeks or months? And do you think that those other jurisdictions are bowing to perhaps political pressure? Because we have heard some politicians there supporting the convoy in Ottawa. You've had a protest there outside the legislature today. So just if you have a bit of a sense on sort of what that timeline could look like.
Well, again, Dr. Henry has made it clear in her briefings that she will have more to say next week. So I'll leave it to her to bring that forward. I wasn't trying to be obtuse there with the question that came from Rob. I understand the work that the public health officials are doing with Minister Dix and others to ensure that we're in sync with the public and the virus, not in sync with a handful of protesters. And having said that, I do absolutely recognize the right of people to dissent to public policy. I come from a party of dissent. I couldn't count the number of protests I've been to in my life, starting in grade 7 and going up until recently. But that does not, I don't recall at any time ever trying to deny rights of other citizens. I don't recall at any time participating in anything that involved threats and intimidation to other citizens. And I would hope, it's not just the convoy movement or any other movement that seeks to put themselves ahead of the rest of British Columbians. That's just not on in a democracy. We certainly welcome those who want to exercise their right to dissent, but we do not, and I don't believe the vast majority of British Columbians support intruding into the lives of other people who are trying to get on with a very challenging time. So I'm hoping.
It's very interesting. He's saying that he doesn't think that people in BC or even in Canada, really, think that it's right to, get in the way of other people's freedoms. I 100% agree with that. And yet it's the very government, the provincial health orders, that has gotten in the way of Canadian and BC for this province's freedoms. I've lost my job. I know many other people have lost their jobs due to a personal choice with their personal health. And by the very definition, that is impeding on my freedom to choose. And yet Premier Horgan is turning around and pointing the fingers at the protesters and speaking about how they're blocking people's freedoms. They're actually just trying to stand up for everybody's freedoms, because this is not about vaccine or unvaccine, it's about freedom of choice. And from the beginning of this, if everybody remembers, the whole thing about getting vaccine is that you protect yourself against the unvaccinated. And so unvaccinated people would really only be putting in danger other unvaccinated people who, again, by choice, are not vaccinated. And so I don't really understand the logic of what Premier Horgan or anyone else that's come up with, from the beginning of this, they keep saying follow the science, and yet from the beginning they said, okay, you get the vaccine, that protects you against the virus. Okay, then later they found out, you can still get, like with the Omicron, science has shown that and this, just to preface it, in the House of Parliament has come up many times, that CDC and like WHO and all of these health organizations are saying that now the rate of transmission between unvaccinated and vaccinated is exactly the same, which makes it seem ridiculous to continue having vaccine passports and any kind of mandates, including masks, where transmission is happening at the exact same rate. It's almost like Mr. Horgan is behind on what is happening with the science, and yet on the one hand he's saying, I'll leave it to Dr. Bonnie Henry. On the other hand, he's like also saying that he's hoping that post, relief from some mandates, that masks should continue being worn. It's like we're in communist China. It's unreal.
I'm hopeful that people will continue to express their discontent in a way that does not interfere with the lives of other people.
Do you have a follow-up, Binder?
I do, and I'd like to ask you about FIFA. A question from a colleague. Do you think Vancouver stands a chance, and can you give us an update on sort of where those discussions may be at?
Well, certainly, I'm happy to do that. We have been approached by Soccer Canada
Okay, I'm
and
going to
officials
just stop it
by
here. I'm going to stop it here because, I just wanted to show you that for those of you who are tuning in. That's from our premiere here in BC.